DecoNetwork software uses a what you see is what you get website editor. This is often commonly referred to as just drag and drop editing. So it's as simple as selecting the page we want to edit, and then we can drag and drop content in the form of a widget onto the page. So let's back up for a second. What is a website? Well, a website is a series of pages, and each page displays content. Content in the eyes of DecoNetwork is in the form of a widget. So anytime we want to display an image, text, products, videos, whatever, it's all going to revolve around selecting a widget and dragging and dropping it onto the page and then editing that widget itself. Now, before we start doing that, we need to talk about rows and columns. And this all applies to virtually any website out there. Every website is essentially broken up into rows of content. So if you look at this, this is a row. This is a row. Row, row, row. So every page is broken up into rows of content, and within a row we have containers and columns. Now, it's not every row has containers and columns. If we just have one container, it's just all the way across the screen. But in this example, you can see I have this row, and you can see this divider here is broken up into this left content and this right. So when we drag a row column onto the page, we then designate how many columns or how many containers or sections are there. So if I make it 3 and I hover over, you can see we have 3 column containers. So if I want to put an image in the middle, I want text on the left, and I want a button on the right. It's as simple as coming over to widgets. Let's add our heading here. So we'll drag the heading, and I'll just type example. I can come back to widgets. I'll grab an image. I'll drag that into the middle. And then on the far right, let's come back to widgets. Let's grab a button here and drag it on there. So you can see all you have to do is add a row, decide how many columns are in that row, and then drag and drop your widgets, essentially the content, onto that container. Now, when you do this, you then often want to go into the widget settings. So if I click on the widget and I go into its settings, I can control the look and the way it actually works. So this header is all about text. If I click on design, you will see here I can control what the color of the text is. So let's just make it a red. Let's change the size of the text. If I want to change the letter spacing, I can. If I want to change the word spacing or the line height or the boldness, I can do all of that. Now, these widget settings, the first 2 columns are typically unique to this specific widget. So within the design here, again, it's all about text, because that's what the header is. It is text, and the way that the font is and works. So the background to advanced is virtually always the same for every single widget. So within the background properties, I could make the background color black, for example. If I go to a different widget, like the button here, I can do the same thing. I can come into the background properties and I can make it black. Now, it doesn't really work very well for this because I don't have much spacing, but if I added a bunch of padding within it, you'll see the background behind it. So every single widget, essentially from background to advanced, is almost identically the same way. It's the first 2 columns that are unique to that specific widget. This is an image. So the content settings is, how big do I want it to be? Within the design settings, I can choose to give it an image effect. So maybe I want to make it a grayscale, so it's black and white. I absolutely can. And then maybe when the customer hovers over it, I actually make it full color. So it's all very much so possible with DecoNetwork's what you see, what you get, drag and drop editing within the website pages. So once I drag my content onto the page, I can edit the look of it by clicking on the widget, primarily manipulating these first two columns, and then little things like background layout, responsive to control those. When it comes to the background, you saw what we did there, often a background color, background image. If I come into layout, the most common ones used is like alignment. So right now we're aligned center. I could align right, and you can see it moves itself over. Padding is space inside of a widget. So you see the blue and the extra space around it. That's padding. So I'll decrease the padding here, and you can see the space within the blue has changed. The margin is spacing outside of the widget. So if I want this to have space above the blue, I can come into the top margin here, and it'll push it down the page. Anytime I edit this, it's also editing here. So let's just say I drug this all the way back up to the top. This margin is now 0. If I drag it down, you can see it's updating. Also within this section, within layout, I can also add an entrance animation. So maybe I want to fade this in. I can make it fade in. Remember, again, background to advanced. This is ultimately almost always the same from widget to widget. If I come into responsive properties, I can control which devices this widget is displayed on. So if I have it on visible for everything, it's always visible. If I want to hide it from a phone, I can simply click hide, and now it will be hidden from the phone. When I go down to the phone, that button is no longer shown. Go to the tablet, it is shown. Want to show it again on the phone, I'll make it visible, come back down to the phone, and there it is. The row itself also has settings. So if I come into row settings, the first configuration is how many columns do I want to have? Well, I have 3. Background, it's almost exactly the same as the widgets. I can choose to give it a background color, for example. Layout properties, maybe I want this background to go all the way across the page. I come to stretch, background full page bleed. I can add padding or margin exactly the same way as I did in a specific widget. So you can see editing a row is very common to editing a widget. The spacing, even same thing. I can make it larger in between columns. But the responsive properties is different. So as we get onto a smaller device, either we push everything in, we squeeze it all, we keep it in line, or we stack columns on top of one another. So you can see by default, all of these devices, other than a phone, is going to be inline. It's going to just keep squeezing and pushing everything in. Once we get down to a phone, we typically always stack the row of content or all the containers. But there's nothing to say I can't come into responsive properties, make it inline, and keep it all squeezed. Or maybe on a tablet, I didn't like the way it was all the way across, and again squeezed. I can come in here and stack it. Obviously it takes some playing around, but DecoNetwork makes it easy to make a really nice website with virtually no previous website design skills. And obviously there's no custom coding. Before we had this drag and drop, what you see is what you get editor, you had to be kind of skilled at custom code to make the site look nicer. Nowadays, almost every content management system uses this what you see, what you get editing. And if you're coming from WordPress or a Shopify, a Wix, there's not a giant learning curve because it works very similar to these other CMS systems. If you have any questions on how to add content to a page, control the widget settings or the row settings, come up to the very top where you can search our many help articles on editing a website, or click on the question mark where you can raise a support ticket with client services, who's there to help you whenever you have questions or you're running into problems. Hopefully you find this video helpful, and thank you for watching.